I'm doing this on my phone and my computer, so we have everything there. All right, so here we go. So what I went ahead and did was I created this document that had answered all the questions I'd received, in addition to a little bit more, a few more resources. So what you can see right here, this goo.gl link, that will take you directly to this document, which you'll have access to at this point and forever after. So I'm going to leave that for a minute and give you a chance to access that. Love here my anonymous animals. So I have an anonymous ibex, and an anonymous pumpkin. It's one of the silly things that Google Cluster or Google Docs do. The other thing I was going to ask before I scroll down and look at the questions was what questions you have off the top of your head. First of all, it's my impression, correct me if I'm wrong, that everyone in the room has been using Quill.
Yes, in some capacity.
Okay. Great. So then from there, that means that really all we want to do is just make sure that your questions are answered, right? And I can show you some of the things that are newish since when you did the PD last year. Any questions right now that you really want to make sure you get answered during this time?
I think I know so you have 3 Sarahs, a Joanne, and a Susan. And for Susan, we're really trying to make sure when we're assigning things, it's kind of obvious what we've assigned before. So when you just go back into activities, there's just a long list of activities again. And just kind of being really able to, it doesn't gray out. Right, it doesn't gray out what we've already assigned. And so I know I'm like unintentionally assigning the same packet again because it's available again.
Okay, so you're saying basically that you're assigning things to kids twice because you're not able to see what you've assigned to them in the past.
Yeah, I can't see, like if I go into the activities, there's just all the activities as opposed to, hey, you assigned this to 100 students on August 14th or whatever.
Are you looking under my activities? Hold on one second. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on what's happening.
She had it open to her own.
So are you saying that you looked under my activities?
Right, but when I go to assign activities, there's just all the activities. So I would love to know, like, if I go to explore all activities and I pull up something, that there would be a feature that's like, oh, you've already assigned this, as opposed to having to work between multiple tabs.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, so there are 2 things there. One, that's absolutely like an excellent suggestion. That's something we can work on. That's not currently a feature we have. The other thing there is that because the reason for that is because you can assign things multiple times, although I don't know if students complete it as different assignments. I think it becomes the same assignment score, but I can check into that. So let me just put that down in terms of notes. Yeah, so right now I know that's a feature that we have, and I think that's one, it's just as we're starting out, that wasn't something that was considered, and 2, I think that was an issue of wanting to make sure that things could be reassigned in case students wanted to do them a second time. Now, I would love to hear, since it sounds like it's happened before, in those cases, did you notice that students were completing, like they were getting a score for that assignment at all? They were having to complete it completely from scratch? Or when it showed up in their account, were they still getting an indication?
I'm not concerned about the student end. I'm just on the teacher end. When I'm going in to assign things, I want to know that I've assigned it already. I'm not even worried about what the students see at this point.
Sure. Okay. That's great feedback, and I'll make sure that I share that with the team. Other questions?
Last year, the kids were able to see their scores if they just dragged their cursor over the puzzle pieces. And kids aren't able to see their scores. Yeah, and I don't know.
So I know that part of the reason.
And like,
sure,
read through the ones that they didn't do well on.
Sure. So the reason the scores were removed, we had a lot of comments from teachers saying that those scores were sort of impacting students' like confidence or desire to continue working on it. So we switched to the red, yellow specifically so that students would know, like the way we've been talking about it with students very simply is red means ask for help, yellow means try it again, and green, right? So we create those bucket areas. We're moving towards a mastery-based grading system over the course of this year. So at this point, we're hoping to give students more information about their progress, right? Here's where you were, here's where you are now. This is something I've been talking to the team a lot about, is my desire to make sure that students can see this is where we started out, right? So this is where I am now. So even if there is a case where a kid completes an assignment twice and gets a red both times, they can still see I improved 20% this time, right? Yes, but for now, the big focus was making sure that students didn't get hung up on the grade and got more attached to the idea of like, this is an area in which I need to continue working. And for a red, that usually suggests some sort of misunderstanding, right? So I am not grasping this as Quill is explaining it. So I need to ask my teacher to walk me through this.
Okay.
Maybe for feedback, if that's an option, teachers could turn on and off, because I know at our site we encourage our students to go back in and try the activity again until they can get to that green. How close they are when they're going in, and we are big in this campus on our grading category of agency, which is being able to really, a big piece of that is being able to self-assess and figure out kind of where am I heading, how do I get there. And when there's no numbers attached, that can be a little confusing for us.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely something. Yeah.
I'm wondering if that is something like kind of site by site.
Yeah, I know it's a little trickier, so we'll absolutely talk about it. I'm not sure how possible that is, but that's something we've been talking about. In general, though, one of the areas that I've been really pushing our team is to really think about how we are doing that, what reflects to the student, right? Like right now, our dashboard is very full, and the only place where students can sort of see what they've done over the course of the assignment is right when they complete the assignment, right? So this is something I'm looking at, and I'd love to hear if you have any other suggestions for what you want students to see, because that is such a priority for you. That would be helpful to me when I'm articulating to the team the things that I wish students had access to when they were working through, right? So one of the things is I'd love for students to be able to sort of go back and see more of the report, at least on a concept level of where they're struggling. Even though I know we can't give them the exact feedback by sentence, because we do make those activities available for them to complete again. Right. But yeah, so the percentages on and off, and then anything else that you can think of that would be super helpful for students to be able to see.
I have one student, and I've talked to the Quill people about it too. She cannot log on at all. And we've tried different computers, different logins, and Quill says that on your end it's okay. It's on our end, but
yeah. Can you tell me you guys are using Google to log in?
Yes.
Or you okay? So you are using Google to log in, and you checked her email address and everything.
Yes. And so
check it right where you can actually see the screen. Let's see if we can address that right now. I gotta sign in. This is me real quick. Hold on. What's the student's email?
Wendy.diaz04@nvusd.org. I think that's it. Let me just double check.
Okay. Yeah. So that is the email we have access to for her. It does say school NA. Let me just sign in. Okay. So she is there. It's interesting. You're right. So we've been able to log in on this side. She's got access. Yeah, and you've assigned her things. So that's really interesting that is an issue she's having.
Tried it at home, at school, different names.
And there's no that she has like a slightly separate email. Like I noticed in some cases with your emails, it was nvsu@d.k12. something. So it could be an issue of it not recognizing that, although it shouldn't be an issue with the Google Classroom. Let me see if she somehow has a second account. I'm not entirely sure how common the name Wendy Diaz is.
That's true.
Okay. All right, so one of the things it looks like, this doesn't have a last sign-in date, so that's probably not relevant.
Can we delete her and then maybe have her sign in?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so what that means is unless you assign things to all classes, you're gonna need to like reassign things to her. But what I can do is oh, see, all right, so we have a different username for her, but that shouldn't usually impact it when she's working. I wonder if I can delete this. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a note of this real quick.
Okay.
Wendy. Yeah. And we made it simple for us to delete accounts deliberately. So I'll see if we can delete her and give her the chance to sort of start in again from sign up.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
And then, you know, if you want, we can also schedule a time for me to like actually have her screen her with me so that we can walk through it and make sure there aren't any issues that way. But yeah, I think that warrants a little extra troubleshooting, and I've actually never heard of that happening before. So that's concerning to me that that's a glitch that this is, you know, you're the first person to report it. So let's check it out. So yeah, so there any other questions, specific issues that you're experiencing?
No, not from my end.
All right. So I wanted to go back to some of the questions that have been asked. The only two big questions I'd gotten from 8th grade were accessing total scores by class and student. We don't currently have class and student scores. I actually wrote up a rough draft of this report this week. So hopefully that's something that we will be releasing pretty soon. So you can see students' overall Quill score and their score on activity packs as a whole. So I'm hoping for that sometime this month or early January, but that's not currently an option.
So Becca, a lot of these
percentages
we're asking about were there when we first signed up for the service.
Interesting.
And then they've disappeared over time. We used to be able to see the overall percentage. It wasn't sorted by class, which was time consuming for us, but it was available. Yeah. And the scores by student were available. And so I'm the department chair. I'm the one who's going to propose whether we continue with the service or not. And one of the major frustrations has been features that we like and need disappearing with no notice, and then we have to wait like a year and a half or 2 years for them to come back.
Okay. So first of all, I joined the team in August, so there are going to be things that you know about what you saw in the past that and it's super helpful for me to hear this from you so that I have the opportunity to sort of address it and ask folks to see what happened. So are you talking, is the percentages question, is that returning to the question earlier about why students couldn't see it? Or was that this is the one
where we can see all of our students with an overall percentage of everything that they've done in Quill? Because when we're putting in a grade, a lot of us don't grade by pack. We kind of, to make it safe for the students, we grade by overall percentage.
Right.
So if student only completed 4 activities, but he's done them really well, he's going to get his like 85% or whatever. And someone else might have done 20 activities, but they have a different percentage. And so it makes it a safe space for them to just practice and work towards that mastery piece.
Sure.
And that's how actually
one of the
are scoring, and that feature went away. And I was told, oh, you can email us and we'll send you a whole class breakdown, which seems like a lot of work on your end.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I'm going to recommend
and transfer to our online scoring system more easily.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I'm actually going to recommend is not to go by percentage for students, right? So if you've seen under the concept report, you can get an overall percentage here. So if you go under student reports and concepts, you can see, sorry, mine blurs out their names for some reason, but you've got the student name and you've got the overall percentage of questions that they've gotten correct at this point. One thing I might recommend to you is, especially because these stay the same, right? We don't currently have a date range for this, although that is in the works. What this is currently is it shows, right? So you can see we have 102 correct sentences out of 147. What that means is no matter how many sentences students get correct, there's always going to, you know, if this student continues to get every single question correct, they're still going to have 45 incorrect questions listed there, right? In the meantime is considering a goal for how many correct sentences you would like students to have at the end of each marking period, term, whatever else, right? So say you are looking for 100 correct sentences over the course of, you know, the first 3 months of school. And then you can sort of say, like, out of 100, how many correct do they have total? And I know that takes a little bit of work. The biggest thing that I think that that does is it means that students can keep doing that work towards mastery, and knowing that no matter how many mistakes they make, they can still get to the point where they have gotten 100 sentences correct.
I appreciate that. I have students with 39 correct and students with 464 correct. So the percentage really is the most helpful. And I have actually gone in at a point like in January and just deleted all previous activities and kind of let them start. We run the diagnostic and let them start again.
Great.
And then that way it gives them that they're not being held accountable for those wrong, incorrect sentences anymore. Okay, I'm glad
right.
Still there then. So just clicking on concept, report by concept.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that some of this is, right, where when the reordering oh, go ahead.
Class?
Sorry?
We can't sort by class with that information, so we're
at this point,
at
this point, I don't think you can sort by class now.
Okay, that would be helpful. We have a number of different online protocols that we use, and when we have to spend 30 to 40 minutes just transferring scores to paper and then into our content management system, it makes teachers bang their heads against walls.
Right. Yeah. Sorting by class. And then data can be seen at the class level. Right. And as I said before, I think that what we're hoping to do too is to make sure that that's embedded in one of the other reports. It's just not currently. Okay, so let me just look. I want to check to make sure that I'm not telling you stories about this. Nope, this is individual assignment. Okay, yeah. So, and that's something I was hoping we could include in our visual overview here, right? Just so you can see right next to the student where they are. But we're working out those reports currently. Other things, questions, areas of concern.
And then I think we also had the question, and it looks like there may be some notes on it, and kind of after the diagnostic, there's some great things, great assignments suggested, but then what do we do after that? After they've gone through all of it, what's our recommended next step?
Okay, great. So that's a question that I'm pretty excited about. Let me see, I'm trying to figure out, I believe I wrote some answers in here. I'm not seeing exactly where they are though. So basically, for me, the most important part is how you're applying Quill beyond Quill. That's something we're currently building out some professional development and materials around. What we find is when kids are completing more than, say, 1 or 2 activities in a week, that's having less of an impact overall on their writing because they're not having the opportunity to apply it beyond Quill, right? So Quill can take you to a certain level, right? It can walk the students through the skill. It can make it easy for them to transfer the skill. But if they never take that next step, that can be a real challenge overall. So one of the things that we really hope that students will do is take that next step. As of August, they now have me, a member of the team who is a former teacher who is focused on that work in terms of what does it look like to extend this for my students. I don't know why I'm having trouble accessing this question. So yeah, so basically the question there and the answer there is there's a few different extension activities that like I would recommend to you in terms of the work that you're doing. In terms of actual Quill work, After those initial recommendations, there are a couple different things, right? If students are completing those recommendations and are successfully getting grades across the board, basically anything else on Quill becomes up for grabs. The two areas where I've seen teachers get the most bang for their buck in terms of creating their own activity packs are when they go for the proofreader activities, which are not usually a huge part of the activity packs, and then having students work through those. Those are usually referred to as formative assessments because they look at a variety of different skills. So if I'm going to explore all activities for the formative, is it listed here? Yeah. Okay, so if I look at, say, like 8th grade, I'll see the summative assessments here, right? And most of these, from what you can see, are Quill proofreader passages. So basically what that means is students have these passages that they're working through towards building those skills. And for each question that they get wrong, it has them go back and practice that skill, right? So this one is focused on appropriate changes, right? So some of this is the theirs and the theirs, some of this is capitalization, other things like that that we're looking for in the passage. As students go through and make those changes, it'll let them know what they got right and wrong, and then it will assign them questions after that, right? So this is a really great way for students to go back and practice those skills they've done so far and continue that work going forward. The next way that we can do this is Quill's been working really hard to build out content-based material, right? So that students are getting the opportunity to really think about things in context. And then the way that you can look at those is under our featured activity packs, and we're still limited on the number of these. We're building these out on a daily basis. We are building out these history different activity packs. So they're history and science based, right? We still only have about 4. And what you can see here is that it's going to actually have students focus on skills related to that, right? So here, the different skills, there are 8 different type passages or focuses for those skills, but each one of them is building on content overall. So featured activity packs are a great next step. They also ask for students to do some more complex sentence work. And then the other area is building a proofreader pack for yourself that can be really helpful overall. Questions about that?
And then when we had the training in May, they talked about the possibility of kind of a midpoint assessment coming through. And I see in your notes that it just says to re-administer the diagnostic, but yeah, there was kind of a midpoint.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
That is, at this point, it's re-administer the diagnostic. Like I said, mastery-based learning is the focus of the entire spring. So at that point, we will have those progress-based items, right? So once again, that's something that I feel is definitely lacking from what we have as an offering right now. And that's something that we're really focused on, is making sure that that progress is something we can track, right? It is very frustrating to me that we can't currently track that right now. And I'm hoping that we can make that something that you can see before, like hopefully by March, I think is the goal for that mastery-based learning work. And we'll keep you updated on that. You should get an update email as soon as that's released. But in the interim, I think that reassigning the diagnostic will at very least let you know which areas students still need work, right? It doesn't tell you what they've done, which is frustrating, but it will tell you where they need to go.
Any other questions on our end? Sarah?
So there's a couple different places I wanted to direct you to. It sounds like you guys are still making pretty good use of the widget in the corner. I'm giving you my email directly. So I am the Director of School Partnerships for Quill. As you probably know, we're just an 8-person team. So we're small enough that I want to make sure that I'm hearing from you. You guys also have some pretty clear feedback around stuff that I want us to work on. So if you can continue to share that feedback with me or email me questions directly, I can help you be directed to the right person more quickly, even if that just means taking care of the issue myself. So please do feel free to take advantage of that. We're also working on some more stuff here in terms of best practices and other things like that. This is just a document that has some suggestions for everything from before you start Quill to how other teachers are using it in certain ways now. Our support page is getting better and better. We have more and more resources, and every time you ask us a question, we try to post the answer somewhere there so you can access those resources. other than that, like I said, please feel free to continue to reach out. The one other thing I just wanted to see if you guys had gotten a chance to check out were the lessons. Have you gotten a chance to look at the lessons yet?
Sarah has. I have not yet.
Do you have any feedback? Sorry?
It takes a couple times doing it, I think, to understand what's happening on the teacher end. But then once I did it a few times, it clicked pretty well, and I liked it. The students liked it, so I don't have any like specific feedback. It seemed to be effective. I know I accidentally kind of jumped in at a midpoint instead of at the first one, so I don't know if titling a little clearer. Like I can't remember what I did. It was sentence fragments. And I think just some titling a little more clearly. Like, this is the second in a series. You should start with the first, since they reference specific sentences in the previous lessons. I think I jumped in at like advanced sentence fragments or something like that, and I didn't realize it would reference specific elements of the prior lesson.
And it doesn't note that anywhere on the first slide. So that was something I thought it did, and it's concerning to me that it didn't.
It may have, but I think just like if that were in the title, like sentence fragments 1, sentence fragments 2. So, because when I see advanced, I'm like, oh, these are kids who kind of get it, and I jump in, and so that was just confusing. That'd be the only, I think, spot of confusion.
Yeah. In general, the difference between the like starter versus intermediate versus advanced is confusing nomenclature. So we got to work on that. But I think that is something, the numbering too. So this is another thing is across the board, we've been working on resequencing materials. When it was first developed, it was developed by people who were very interested in the research of writing, but not as familiar with the practice of teaching it. So now what we're doing is we're going back and resequencing all that material so it actually is relevant in a certain order. So I'll make sure that is something that we're looking at in terms of quickly adding those sequencing titles. I know that in the interim, one of the ways that they've sequenced it is by sort of the activity pack of that standard. Sorry, give me 1 second so I can show it. So it should be, if you're looking under the featured activity packs, so you're looking at the basic fragments here. Lessons, I think you're talking about. Was that there before? The lessons 1, 2, 3, 4?
This was. We've had a lot happening in our district in the last few weeks, and that was definitely before the fires. So I can't tell you for sure.
Okay, not a problem. I just think that at this point, I'm hoping that this was the change that you needed to see is all that I'm looking at now.
No, it's more that the lessons themselves, like when you're going through it with the students, like so basic, that's obviously the first one. But I wasn't clear to me, and now it is, that going to the second in a series is impossible because the students couldn't progress through the second lesson because they didn't have just the contextual information they needed from the previous lesson. Mm-hmm. So they didn't need that first lesson. They were ready for the second step, but that wasn't appropriate for my students because I could only do about half the slides because they referenced a specific previous lesson as opposed to just concepts, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Hold on. I'm just trying to phrase this for myself so I make sure I get this right. Is it possible to provide prereq slides in each lesson so that teachers don't have to go through every lesson if the students are at a more advanced level? I can tell you now, although it sounds like you guys have a lot on your hands in terms of not having a lot of time to do customization, and I know that's a definite concern, is that at this point you can customize lessons so that you can actually change what's in there, right? So if you wanted to remove something or change like the nature of that slide, so you could use the entire presentation with students, you can change every single slide in the presentation now so that it mirrors what it is that you want to do, especially while we're working on going going back and sort of sequencing things and making sure that we can build in some of those prerequisite questions. I'm hoping that will be helpful to you so that you can either change or remove anything that's not directly applicable to your students in that case.
Well, I love the concept of that. I can pretty much guarantee you fewer than 10% of the teachers here will actually do that, given the other expectations we have on our time. But I love that it's available for the teachers who can do that.
Absolutely.
We need it to be plug and play, because our other grammar resources that we have through our curriculum are really quite limited and don't really allow student practice, which is what we love about this. But because we have a significant other amount of like kind of programs in place, this one just has to work.
Before I joined Quill, I was an ed tech coach, and that's actually how I got connected to Quill. Was I was using it with teachers, and I was giving them very similar feedback to the things that you're sharing with me now. The thing that's most concerning to me is knowing that there were things there that disappeared, and you can no longer find that. I know a lot of this other stuff is going to take time to develop, right? So we're working pretty fast, and we're trying to do everything we can. But I think that, really my biggest concern now is making sure that things aren't changing or moving on you without a very clear direction of where to go next. So I'm going to look into those things especially. And then in general, these things are helpful that I can pass on as we're building out our roadmap for features that we're developing. So thank you for that. It's super duper helpful. And I'm very sorry for the frustration you're experiencing. I know it sounds like you guys have had a pretty rough year, and I really appreciate that you're still attempting to use this tool, even when it's not doing everything you need it to do. Okay, so I can share, it sounds like you guys, some of you have had the opportunity to try lessons. If you have any questions as you're starting out, I do know that one of the things that I'm working on right now is developing an actual quick tip videos to make it easier to pick that up, so it doesn't have to take so many times, and especially for the student facing side, I think that's something that we need to build out, is making it easier for students to understand how it works. But if there's anything else you can think of, anything else you'd like me to answer right now, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to give you guys my email, and then you can share some information right after this call. Anything else?
Anything else you want to?
I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll keep playing and send you feedback.
Great, awesome. Thanks. Yeah, and that's becca@quill.org. You'll get an email from me right after this, and you can get in touch with me whenever you need me.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, take care. Bye.
Thank you.